Before I enter the gallery, I think of how talking about art makes me feel tongue-tied. But then I think, don't talk about it, just experience it. But then I think, I promised I'd talk to you. I'm frightened that whatever it is I think or feel, I won't find the right words to explain anything, or that you won't want to hear it anyway. I must admit I nearly walked away, but I don't. I enter the gallery, and so here I am, feeling on the spot in the middle of the room. The soundtrack grounds me as I experience these moving pictures, elements, pixels, each pixel a sample of an original image. But I lose my place. I'm sent backwards like I've entered a time machine. Memories flow, each memory a sample of an original event, perhaps. I think of how nervous I was the first time I went to an art gallery. I could walk into a nightclub and go home with a stranger, but walking into a gallery felt intimidating. The first gallery I ever went to was the Tate, now Tate Britain. I was 16, and I remember my anticipation on the train trip from Manchester Piccadilly to London Euston. And I recall the gallery shop, but I can't picture any art hung on the walls from that day. I hid my excitement, embarrassed by it, when I purchased my first ever art book in the Tate shop, Masterpieces of Lithography and Silkscreen. I bought it because of the cover, Marie the Acrobat, by Fernand Léger, a name I could not pronounce then, and also had to ask in advance of talking to you now about how to pronounce. I wrote my own name on the inside leaf of this first art book I'd ever possessed, which featured no art made by women. And now Ursula floats into my mind. She was 5 years old, and so was I. She was my first crush. It was not a requirement at infant school to wear a uniform, but Ursula did. Her blouse was white, and her pinafore and her tie were olive green. This colour and her name seemed so unusual, and I loved her for it. Ursula and her glamorous mother visited me at home after my tonsils had been taken out. Ursula presented me with a gift set of monogrammed handkerchiefs. It was the first time I had seen my initials in print, and I felt special. She let me pull her tie, the elastic it was attached to stretching towards me, and I thought about her tonsils deep inside where mine had gone. And when I snapped Ursula's tie back into place onto her collared throat, she smiled. And now the image of 3 ties, blue, brown, black, my father's ties. I don't know what happened to them. I wish I had one now to tie me to him, as I have nothing but memories used over and over again, so they've begun to warp. I sometimes wore my father's ties. I practiced tying the knot when he wasn't around. I wish I could say it was my dad that showed me how to tie a tie, but he never taught me this skill. A skill that once upon a time felt to me sophisticated and a little freeing, but soon became part of a world of uniform and convention that I felt outside of. I wonder if when he died, by his own hand, he was wearing his tie, which he had begun to wear in a bigger late 70s knot. I conclude he probably was. He was a smart man. But now, like big arrows pointing me in another direction, I am reminded of my impressive plastic pack of 100 felt tip pens, my favourite Christmas present ever when I was 9. The felt tips were sent to me by my artistic, flaming hennaed hair Auntie Liz. It was incredible to me, these pens in every colour I could wish for, though it was the black one that ran out first. My Auntie Liz painted portraits of herself. One side of the picture was always brown and the other side green. Being a painter seemed hand in hand with the word schizophrenic, a word I first heard in connection with her. A barbed insult in our family was, "You're just like Auntie Liz." I was terrified of turning out like her and spent years being vigilant so those words couldn't be aimed at me. Even writing to Jim will Fix It on the telly, asking Jimmy Savile if he could maybe make me a scientist, anything but be arty. Auntie Liz died in her early 50s, and at her funeral, her psychiatrist, who had become her lover, said to me, "You remind me of her." And while my gut instinct was to recoil, as I had all my life, now she was gone, I thought it was time to end the threat of being her. So before I turned away, I said, "Thank you." Auntie Liz once painted a portrait of me, which often hung in the various places my mother and myself moved to. In the painting, I was 10, wearing a yellow polo neck jumper, blue jeans, cross-legged on the floor, playing my Descant recorder. Years later, I asked my mum for the painting, but she had thrown it away, wanting nothing to do with the memory of her demanding, difficult sister. I was sad my mother hadn't kept it. For a long period of time, Auntie Liz was the only woman artist I had ever heard of. And then teachers and tongs intertwine. A female supply teacher in junior school covering for our everyday teacher, asking anyone in the class who could touch their nose with their tongue to come to the front and demonstrate. I put myself forward alongside another girl, Karen. We stood there, Karen and I, pointing our tongues and reaching up for our noses, on contact with my nostrils, flicking my tongue from one to the other. I felt heroic, proud, good at something. I remember an air of disbelief in the room, but no giggles, only the grin of the teacher at this exposing of something we weren't usually supposed to show in the polite world. And I felt a surge of joy as I came out the winner, as on the teacher's encouragement, I touched my chin with my tongue, which Karen couldn't do. I remember later feeling a deflating sense of shame. The compulsory blue graphic dash of a river on my school tie. The fashion was for big knots, but I wore my knots small, as you'd be able to see if I showed you my obligatory first-year school photograph from the time. Another thing you would perhaps notice in the photograph is my face is marked with a small line of black felt-tip pen. For years I assumed it was on the photograph itself, but on closer examination I discovered it was actually on my face. My school was called Goynt Bank Comprehensive, named after the River Goynt, which ran by the school. The River Goynt quickly joins another river to form the River Mersey, forever in my mind associated with Liverpool, as I had no idea it began in my hometown of Stockport. According to Wikipedia, Goynt was derived from the Middle English goat, meaning watercourse, or perhaps the Welsh gwyth, meaning vein. I think of the central vein in the forehead of my clarinet teacher at school, throbbing and bulging as he chased me around the warren of music rooms. When he caught up with me, catching my long chestnut hair in his meaty hands, bending me backwards over a table, his big knotted loose jazzy tie dangling over me, he wrapped sellotape around my head, around my mouth. I gave up clarinet that day. I was 12. And I think of all the things I wish I could say now to the geography teacher who doubled as our head of year at school and was known for reducing girls to tears. It was his famed speciality. He called me to his office and with his face inches from mine, berated me for the way I dressed, my green fluorescent socks, my pink hairband, my homemade floor-length black skirt. He called me a clown and accused me of being a socialist, like it was a terrible thing, and uttered the words that I have never forgotten. If I could put all my knowledge into your head, you'd be a very clever 13-year-old little girl. Here in this gallery, I forget about what is expected of me. Right now, in this space that I have let myself come into and that I let myself go in, the only ideas and feelings that seem important are the artist's and my own. I am untying knots, feeling pulses, hearing heartbeats, sounding out a life support machine. And so I begin, and I let the artist take me to her places and my places, because she does and she can. And I start to feel like a river joining another river, and I connect.